let's flip around. You talked a lot about kind of the technology infrastructure and kind of how that plays out, and really where investors are thinking about capital and returns. But how does this look for users in terms of how does the crypto infrastructure kind of change the products and services and goods that we interact with on a daily basis? I think people understand the argument for Bitcoin as money and that not being kind of fiat or kind of in the traditional technology format. But what else? Like, how do you think about the actual everyday life of a person somewhere in the world changing because of this crypto infrastructure?
Yeah, I think it's going to be kind of like the phone in a sense, which is to say that it's going to change everything, but you will stop thinking about it as a separate thing. So like there was a time when people were doing mobile apps where like investors would see pitch decks or founders would go in and pitch and be like, we're a mobile app company, right? And here's what we do. And like if you did that today, your investors would just be like, well, like, of course you are. Like, what else would you be, right? Like, of course you're a mobile company, right? And so I think that's kind of how it will happen. So the question is like, what are the use cases where people are going to use these things and they won't even realize that it's crypto behind the scenes, right? And then one day, 5 or 10 years from now, like every company will just have this and it'll just make sense to use these primitives. And then you won't even call them crypto companies. It'll just be, that's just like an app or that's just a company, right? So a really concrete example would be, like Facebook is doing this, what used to be called Libra is now called Diem, which is the idea that you could have this way to move money really, really quickly between people all over the world. And of course that makes sense inside something like Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp. And in a lot of other use cases. And so like Shopify is part of that network. And they're trying to make that happen and they have all sorts of challenges. But you can imagine if they launch that, like all of a sudden 1 billion people would be moving money around the world using crypto infrastructure because that's actually a better way to do this stuff. It's actually like the 2020s computer science version of how do I move money around the world instead of like 1970s infrastructure, which is kind of how we do it today. And so I think that's how it plays out. Or like another good way this is, I think, going to play out is like through the creator economy. Like creators are, musicians and artists and, all these people that are just so creative about how they're using media. And you're already starting to see it happen, right? Like, what does it mean for a musician to like make music, but retain the rights to that music, right? Is there a way for them to essentially have like the rights be digital and be guaranteed that they own them, but perhaps be able to resell them? Or what does it mean for a creator to be able to like, raise money, right? So creators are really interesting. Creators are like the new small business. Like 15 years ago, if you were a SaaS business and you went to a bank and you're like, hey, look, we have really good ARR. Will you lend us money? The banks were like, no, I don't. That's like not a physical asset. How do I lend against that? They didn't understand this concept of recurring revenue. How do you do that as like a YouTube creator or a TikTok creator today? Can you go to a bank and be like, hey, I have 18 million fans or followers. Like, please lend me money so I can like hire staff and make better content and like monetize better. Like no bank is going to give you money, right? Because they don't understand that asset. But your fans might, right? And so maybe what you can do is like issue a token and your fans will all buy that token. And if they find you when you're just starting out, and there's a limited number of tokens, and those tokens give you benefits, like you get to be a part of an invite-only fan club. Like maybe those tokens appreciate in value over time, and so when that creator is really popular, then those tokens are worth a lot of money. And so that you get to, and creators are playing with this kind of stuff today, right? It becomes for the creator like a financing mechanism, and for the fans a way to like support the people that they care about, but also potentially participate in the like financial upside of identifying people, so you can become like a talent scout. That's totally going to happen. And it very well will happen on crypto infrastructure. It's just like people may not realize that that's what they're doing behind the scenes, right? So I think that's kind of how it plays out. Is like over the next 5 years, there will just be some killer use cases, and the average person won't even realize that what they're using is crypto.